In the river town of Moonbridge, nights arrived like a velvet ribbon, tying quiet around every roof and window. Lanterns along the stone paths gave off a soft honey glow, and the river itself seemed to hum a lullaby as it slid beneath the arch of the old bridge. On the hill above town stood a narrow shop of weathered oak and green-shuttered windows. Aurelius Finch, clockmaker. Inside, time did not hurry. It drifted like dust in lamplight, turning and turning in silence. Aurelius was an old man with gentle hands and bright eyes. He spoke softly to his clocks as if they were shy birds. On his walls hung pendulums of walnut and ash. On his table sat pocket watches that opened like silver moons. Every evening, when the last cat padded home and the bakery stilled its ovens, Aurelius lit a small lamp, wound a handful of timepieces, and listened to the room find its rhythm tick. Tuck, tick like a calm heartbeat for the town. One late autumn night, when mist curled along the cobbles and leaves whispered against the door, a visitor arrived. It was a girl wrapped in a blue wool coat, her cheeks pink from climbing the hill. She stood on the threshold, hesitant, hearing the layered music of all the clocks. Aurelius looked up and smiled, a smile that seemed to warm the air. "Come in," he said. "You've brought the river's breath with you." "My name is Lysa," the girl replied, closing the door behind her. In her gloved hands, she carried a small wooden box. "My grandmother's pocket watch stopped. She said you would know how to start it again." Aurelius welcomed her to the counter and opened the box with care. Inside lay a copper watch with a face the color of old cream and numbers painted by a steady hand. A tiny nick curved near the 7 like a dimple. He lifted the watch to his ear as if it might whisper a secret. "It has not stopped," he said after a time. "It is simply listening for its story." Lysa frowned a little. "A story?" "Every good watch keeps 2 kinds of time," Aurelius explained, turning the crown with 2 slow clicks. "The time for trains and ovens and school bells, and the time for memories. One cannot move without the other." He motioned toward a stool. "Sit with me. We'll invite it to remember." The old clockmaker set the copper watch on a velvet pad and opened its back with a small brass tool. The gears glimmered like a tiny city at dusk. He drew a breath as soft as a feather and began to clean and oil the mechanism, his hands unhurried. Around them, the shop's clocks settled into a shared tempo, a meadow of ticks, as if the wind had chosen a single direction. For the grass. Lysa watched his work, the way he paused now and then, listening, as though a distant shore were speaking. "Your grandmother," Aurelius said at last, "loved the river. I can hear it in the watch's cadence. She must have walked the bridge at evening when the lamps came on." "She did," Lysa whispered, surprised. "She would take me there every Sunday. We counted boats and made up names for the stars." Aurelius smiled. "There it is, the second kind of time." He closed the back of the watch and laid his palm over it. "Tell it one of those names." Lysa leaned closer. "We called the bright one near the tower Sparrow Star because it hopped from the smoke." The clockmaker lifted his hand. The second hand shivered once, then began to move one breath, then another steady, delicate, alive. Lysa gasped, the sound a bell of relief. "You fixed it." "We invited it back," he said. "Memories are the teeth of the gear that moves the gentler hours." Lysa looked around the shop, noticing a tall case clock by the window whose face was painted with a night sky. Instead of numbers, it showed small constellations, each with a name in gold leaf: Baker's Fire, Miller's Wheel, Cobbler's Nail. "Did you make that one?" she asked. "Yes." Aurelius stood and touched the wooden case as you might touch the shoulder of an old friend. "It keeps Moonbridge time." "What is Moonbridge time?" "The time the town breathes together," he replied. "When the market laughs, when the fairy horn lingers, when the rain slows so the swallows can find their nests." I said it not by seconds, but by kindness. He tilted his head. "Would you like to help me wind it?" They crossed the room, their steps soft on the polished floor. Aurelius opened the door of the case clock. Inside hung 2 brass weights, each engraved with tiny vines and leaves. Lysa took the crank he offered, and together they turned, slow and steady. The chain rose, the weight climbed, and the clock gave a contented sigh of wood and metal. When they finished, Aurelius tapped the pendulum gently. It swung once, twice, and found its center. He lowered his voice. "At midnight, when the bridge hums and the river hushes, the clock invites the town to dream." He looked at Lysa. "Some midnights, it invites the clockmaker too." A draft rustled under the door, bringing the scent of wet stone and distant bakery sugar. Outside, the fog had thickened into a pale blanket, and the shop windows glowed like small hearths for any passing soul. Lysa checked the copper watch. Its hands felt confident now, like a bird testing a calm wind. "Would you?" she began, then paused. "Would you tell me a story while it settles? One for sleeping, so I can remember it later when the house is quiet." Aurelius nodded. He took a small key from his vest pocket and turned down the lamp until the room grew gentle. Only the clock. Faces held their soft halos. "Then listen," he said, "to the story of the bridge that chose its night." He spoke in the rhythm of tide and breath. Long ago, before the shops and the fairy horn, when the hill held only grass and clusters of violets, there was a river who could not rest. By day it ran bright, laughing around stones, but by night it fretted. It worried the banks, tugged at the reeds, carried the moon in broken shards. Travelers would wait for dawn to cross, for the water was impatient and careless in the dark. Mason named Ivo lived nearby, a man who loved to listen. He learned the shape of stone by touch, the patience of mortar by scent. He watched the river at dusk, how it shivered under the first star, and he said, "You are lonely, friend. You need a quiet to lean on." Ivo built a bridge from the hill's bones, arch by arch, with gaps for swallows and a curve as kind as a hand. He worked through late afternoons when the light turned soft as bread. When the bridge was finished, he waited for the first night. The river sulked and pushed, but the arch did not answer with force. It answered with presence. The stones held, not resisting the water, just staying. And the river learned that stillness could be a kind of companion. It found in time that it could rest under the bridge. And so the town grew around that rest. But once a year, Aurelius continued, the river chooses the quietest night, and the bridge sings back, not with sound, but with a hush that spreads through streets and windows, through ovens and lanterns, until even worries draw a blanket up to their chins. On that night, clocks keep the second kind of time. They do not hurry, they remember. Lysa listened with her eyes half closed, the copper watch warm in her hand. The shop felt larger and smaller at once, larger in its piece, smaller in its edges, as though its walls were made of dusk. The ticks of the clocks gathered like rain on a roof and then soft to something more tender, like a mother humming to a child. She breathed in the scent of oil and wood and a sweetness she could not name. "Is tonight that night?" she asked. Aurelius tilted his head, and they both paused. Beyond the glass, the fog had stilled. The river hum had settled lower into a gentle chord. Somewhere far off, a door closed with a considerate click. The old clockmaker smiled. "If it is not, it is practicing." He returned to the counter and took a strip of blue cloth from a drawer. He wrapped Lysa's box carefully and tied the bow with a little flourish that made the ribbon ripple like water. "There," he said. "A watch that knows its story travels." "Better." Lysa stood, reluctant to leave the room where time was a kindness. "Will I see you again?" "You will," Aurelius said. "Bring the watch back when it needs another story. Or when you do." She thanked him, opened the door, and stepped into a night that felt somehow more spacious. The lamplight along the path looked like islands in a quiet sea, and the mist parted gently around her, as if the air wished her soft dreams. She held the box close and walked down the hill, the town below like a sleeping cat folded into itself. Aurelius watched her go until the bell's last tremor faded. He turned the lamp down further and crossed to his workbench where a small, unfinished clock waited, a river carved along its face, a silver bridge for the hour hand to cross, stars scattered in mother of pearl. He took up his file, then set it down again. There was no need to finish it tonight. Tonight he would listen. He moved to the window and opened it a finger's width. The room inhaled the fog. The tall case clock near the glass showed a minute to midnight. Aurelius rested his palm on its wooden side, and for a moment he felt the town in the grain, the sigh of old beams, the drowse of cats, the last ember in a stove, the ferry rope slack on its post. He whispered something like a thank you. When the clock's hand reached 12, the pendulum did not stop. It found a deeper rhythm. The bridge did not sing, it kept company. And the river, a little less lonely, laid itself down. The hush drifted up the hill, into the green-shuttered windows, into every gear and tooth, into the old man's bones, into his eyes that had learned to see the other kind of time. He closed them. Below, Lysa crossed the arch and paused in the middle. She pressed the copper watch to her ear, hearing not the brisk march of seconds, but the soft, patient stepping of memory. She looked up, and there, hopping near the smoke,